Women's movement, not only a test for courage and willpower, but a test for strength and alliance. One of our greatest founding fathers said, "All men are created equal." I guess he didn't know that probably all men should have meant some women.
There were many women in the 1920s time frame. One group of influential women in this time period were the flappers. The flappers were a group of young women in the 1920s who challenged social traditions with their dress and behavior. They strived to provoke and make it known that women were just as significant as men were.
Flappers did things such as shortening their dresses, which exposed their arms and legs. They wore their hair short and sleek. They wanted to make themselves seem more masculine in a feminine type way. They flattened their chests using girdles. They did manly things such as smoking cigarettes, except to add a little class to it, they used long cigarette holders. They wore silk or rayon stockings with garters. They emphasized jewelry with putting on hot red lipstick and long beaded necklaces. Women also started to disregard the housewife, fad that seemed to be the American dream. They danced for money instead of actually working. Yet, when they did work, it was not as womanly as it should have been. Working in factories or garages, trying to give the impressions of women being just as hardworking as men.
The women in this time frame fought for a number of things. Not many seemed to care for what a woman was saying, though. So women in the 20s went on labor strikes and political strikes against the government.
These women fought for child welfare legislation.
Clear food and working condition standards.
They also fought for drug laws and restrictions.
I can't sleep at night. I can't eat a bite.
Women did not always start these rallies and raise money for these rallies the legal way.
Oh, mama, she makes me feel so blue. I don't know what to do. Sometimes
Women tried really hard to expose themselves, so they started women clubs, which were pretty much clubs against the government. So, to get the money they needed, they started to become bootleggers, which were people who did not care about prohibition laws and smuggled liquor into bars, clubs, or even the country. Before World War I, it was even worse. Women such as the infamous Alice Paul strived to gain women the right to vote, own land, and stop their excesses of work time. After the 19th Amendment, it did allow women the privilege to vote, but that came with many, many restrictions. Miss Alice Paul once said, "When you put your hand to the plow, you can't put it down until you get to the end of the row," which for her meant she wasn't going to stop fighting until she got what she wanted. Her life symbolized the long struggle for justice in the United States and around the world. Her vision was the ordinary notion that women and men should be equal partners in society. In that, women extended time and effort to mobilize their energy to gain the right to vote.
Baseball of the 1920s. Baseball became one of the most popular things in the 1920s. Some of the factors that helped baseball become more popular was the radio, newspapers, stability, meaning teams were officially made during the 20s, corkballs, the creation of Negro Leagues, which provided opportunity for some of the greatest players in baseball history, and the making of stadiums. However, the greatest factor that changed baseball was Babe Ruth. He brought tons of people to games so they can see him hit a home run and be amazing. He is considered one of the greatest players in baseball history.
Boxing in the 1920s. One of the sport was boxing. In boxing, people use some very fantastic techniques to win their fight. The boxer must be in exactly physical conditions so they can win their fights. Boxing is one of the oldest sports they made. Some changes in the 1960s, like using bare fists to using gloves. Jack Dempsey was one of the most well-known boxers. In the 1920s, he was the champion.
Helen Willis was born on October 6, 1905 through January 1, 1998. She was an American tennis player. She has been described as the first American-born woman to achieve international celebrity as an athlete. Helen Willis won 31 Grand Slam titles during her career, including 7 titles at the French Championships, 8 singles at Wimbledon, and she also won 2 Olympic gold medals in Paris. She won her first women's national title at the age of 17. She had a 158 winning streak. She also defeated Phil Neer, the 8th-ranked American player. She appeared on the cover of Time magazine and put in the Tennis Hall of Fame.
Football in the 1920s. In the 1920s, football wasn't really a popular sport. Not that many tickets were sold, but a few people took notice. Tickets to games could hardly be given away. Before men changed the game into a popular sport, it rapidly grew into one of the most favorite sports today.
The Black Sox scandal. In 1919, 8 players from the Chicago White Sox were accused of throwing the World Series against the Cincinnati Reds for money. This was the most famous scandal in baseball history. The White Sox were nicknamed the Black Sox because of the scandal. All 8 players were banned from professional baseball for life.